watching Goal Line Extended presented by Lacrosse Flash.
What's going on, Lacrosse fans? Welcome to Goal Line Extended on the Lacrosse Flash Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ryan Hulsebos. Glad that you could join us as we get set to look ahead to Week 7 of the PLL season, the second to last weekend of the regular season from Colorado Springs, Colorado. And then following a week off, the league will be in the capital city of New York, Albany, New York, at the University of Albany for the 8th and final weekend of the regular season. And then we'll be right into the playoffs where we will see the top 7 of 8 teams moving on, and we should start to see a clear playoff picture come together this coming weekend in Colorado, as we are now getting into crunch time when it comes to the PLL season. And the best player in the game put it pretty simply, and I think every team at this point feels the same way, that the playoffs have started at this point. Really, every game, every win, every goal matters right now, and Lyle Thompson and his Cannons. And like I said, I'd imagine every other team at this point in the season is treating each game from here on out like it's a playoff game. And for every team besides the Water Dogs and Cannons, that will be 3 more games over these next 2 weekends. Before we get into all of that, though, and more, obviously, as we had a pretty busy weekend of both junior and pro lacrosse action, despite the PLL bye week, let me welcome in lacrosse insider Dan Arestia and Lacrosse Flash writer and reporter Jordan Johnson. Gentlemen, how are we feeling this week? No PLL games this past weekend, as I mentioned there before, but if you wanted or needed your lacrosse fix, Jordan, there was a ton of lacrosse out there to choose from.
For sure, man. Whether you were going box or field, men or women, you had your options, and it was all great, man.
Dan,
yeah, I'm ready to get back to the outdoors. I'm ready to get back to the PLL season here. Pumped to see what they get after in Colorado. I think everybody's got to answer for some games. Got some fun roster moves. I'm fired up, ready for games right now.
Oh, yeah, and as Jordan was saying, despite no meaningful PLL action the last 2 weekends, as we had the All-Star Game and Skills Challenge last Sunday and then a full bye week this past weekend, there still was a ton of options out there to choose from to fill that lacrosse void. So hopefully for everyone watching and or listening, you got a chance to tune into the OJLL, or Athletes Unlimited Professional Women's Lacrosse, over the weekend, as both kicked off their 2021 summer seasons. And before we get into the PLL, that is where we are going to kick off today's show, as our very own Pat Gregoire is a part of the OJLL broadcast team for JVI Sports Network. You can find them and rewatch the games if you are interested on the JVI Sports Network YouTube channel. But Greggy did an incredible job, was calling a few games by himself there at times. He conducted a ton of interviews after the games with players. You can find all of those on the OJLL social media pages, but there was a ton of games. Each team played 4 in total, and there's 11 teams in total. I'm not a great math guy, but I'd imagine that total is at least over 20 games played. So an awesome job by Greggy and everybody that he's working with over there at JVI Sports to cover the Ontario Junior Box Lacrosse League, as junior box lacrosse, not something that the 3 of us are very familiar with, but still some great lacrosse nonetheless, with a few names that us as college lacrosse fans can recognize. Guys like Dyson Williams were out there. There's a handful of future NLL players that we will see this December as well, playing out their final year of eligibility in the OJLL. So all in all, an exciting weekend of box lacrosse, and another one will follow this coming weekend. So make sure to tune in and follow the league across social media. But Jordan, we also got to see the new Athletes Unlimited Pro Women's Lacrosse League debut this past weekend across CBS Sports Network, Fox Sports 1, and on YouTube, which gave us even more lacrosse content this weekend on the PLL's bye. And more content led to more excitement, as Jordan, it seemed like it was behind the back goal after behind the back goal all weekend. And Athletes Unlimited is already getting geared up here for week 2. We should shortly be getting these rosters. I think a few names have already come out, which will be drafted and then captained by defenseman Kayla Wood, attackman Kayla Trainer, who was recently hired as the women's head coach for Syracuse, midfielder Dempsey Arsenal, and midfielder Haley Warden, as they were the top 4 point getters through the first 3 games through the Athletes Unlimited player scoring model. So an awesome first weekend. What are some of your biggest takeaways, Jordan, from week 1 as the AU women get set for week 2 and the ensuing month ahead?
So the first one is the broadcast, man. You have to commend the league for coming out of the gate with just a great overall broadcast. A lot of our people in Maryland and who were familiar with the MLL are familiar with Joe Beninati. Having him call pro lacrosse is just great again. They did a great job of just explaining the point system. Look, at first, it's a little bit complicated to get a holdup, but they did a great job throughout the weekend of explaining the system, explaining who was in the leaderboard, how this is going to affect things like the MVP race and the season bonuses. And of course, as you mentioned before, the 4 captains for the next week. And then second of all, as you mentioned before, the behind the back goals. We had the first game on Friday start off with the behind the back goal, and then the first game on Saturday start off with a behind the back goal. So if you're not familiar with women's lacrosse, just even the girls' stick having it be such a smaller pocket, excuse me, and be able to pull it off is just amazing to see. And it's a lot more. And this Athletes Unlimited style is a lot more physical than we've seen previously in WPLL and even in college lacrosse. So all around great performances. And if you're a team in Athletes Unlimited, I kind of threw this out there on Twitter with the whole drafting system, and we'll see when these results come in tonight as we're doing this on Monday, what the teams will sort of look like. Will the captains look to sort of bring back players to keep chemistry, or in other cases, will they sort of shake up to try and see what they can do as we go throughout the 5 weeks? Just get different looks and whatnot. So overall, just a great product to watch over the weekend, and I, along with the rest of you, look forward to watching it throughout these next 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting there that you mentioned in terms of, do these 4 captains want to kind of keep consistency in terms of players that they've played with here in week 1, or obviously then going into week 3? Do you want to try to keep players that you played with in week 1 and in week 2? Something that we will watch for as these captains kind of go through this draft process, as each week we'll have 4 new captains, or if a captain obviously I guess plays up to the point. There's a whole point system. If you want to check it out, it's at the Athletes Unlimited homepage. You can find the point system. But the captains for the following week are determined by the play of that week. So the week 3 captains will be determined by the play of every single player this coming week in week 2. So something that's very interesting. We really haven't seen something like this before. So definitely very interesting to see the women's lacrosse game doing it. It was great to see Athletes Unlimited wrap up as well. Just an incredible first weekend. Really, just to get that first one under their belt and squared away has to feel really good for everyone involved, especially after what we saw last year, as you were saying before, with the PLL folding after a very short lifespan. So awesome for all the athletes and personnel involved, and we will continue watching very closely over the next month or so as the Athletes Unlimited season runs its course, as we'll have the OJLL, AU Pro Women's Lacrosse, and the end of the PLL season and the playoffs to look forward to over the next month or so, along with what is becoming a hot transfer portal in NCAA men's lacrosse. Let's start with the big news, though, from the NCAA, as they've announced some rule modifications to both the men's and women's game ahead of the 2022 spring. Most notably, the shot clock has been adjusted for both games. As for the men and women, the shot clock will reset to 60 seconds instead of the full 80 seconds when a shot either hits the goalie or the goal, and that possession obviously is kept by the offensive team. So something that we've seen implemented in the PLL, a shorter shot clock, even though the PLL is already 52 seconds to begin with. This should allow for some faster pace and more efficient lacrosse to both games. Also for the women, their games have historically been 2 30-minute halves rather than 4 quarters. That will no longer be the case, as beginning in 2022, games will be played in 4 15-minute quarters, So Dan, some interesting modifications here as we get set for the 2022 season. How do you think these two in general, modifying the shot clock and the change from halves to quarters for the women, will impact both games this coming spring?
Yeah, I think the change to the shot clock for men, when they first announced the shot clock, the original shot clock rules and everything, with the 80 and then reset to 80, I think there were people at that point who were saying, why aren't we doing 80 reset to 40, reset to 60, something like that? So I think this was a rule that people kind of maybe wanted to see them go to right out of the gate. We'll see how it looks. It's great when fall rolls around and you get to check out these changes to rule sets or other maybe experimental rules that might roll out between now and then, where we're going to try them in fall ball and see if they work. These are going to be good, though. I like the short reset. I'm not one of the people who says, that the men's college should just take the PLL shot clock. I don't mind the difference between the two levels. You see differences in timing rules between college and pro football, college and pro basketball, and it works in both places. So I think having a little variation there is fine for the health of the sport. But I like the reset to 60 a lot. I like that it's not necessarily enough time to just be like, all right, let's just hold out for a minute here, really get all these subs happening, change our personnel completely, get into a whole new offense. You have a 60 seconds, which is enough to set up a good re-attack at the net. But the full 80, that 20 seconds is a longer time than you might think. So I'm happy to see that change. I think I was one of those people who was saying, why don't we go 80-60 or something similar to that? So I think this is a healthy one. For the women, I think it's the same kind of thing. I think it's a healthy change. We'll kind of see. I'm not well versed enough in the rules that might also be, changing along with this, how this impacts the split of a half, how this impacts, the way maybe you deploy your personnel, with knowing that you're going to play running time quarters instead of running time halves. So, that sort of remains to be seen. Again, I'm not as well versed in the women's game to know really the nuances of just how much you're going to feel the ripple of that change. So, I'm going to look forward to giving it a watch and seeing how it plays out. That's a change that's a little more sweeping in the sense that it's going from quarters to halves is fairly significant. And I would love it if high school would mirror that. That's a place where I would like to see some more consistency. So, I know there's high school federation rules, where I live here in Connecticut, the public schools use federation rules. So we still don't have a shot clock for the boys, and the girls are still going to be doing their running time halves. I would like to see both these timing rules make its way there, but I guess one miracle at a time. So, I think they're good changes, though. I think they're good, healthy changes for the sport at the college level.
One small step at a time here for the college game. Hopefully, we'll see, as you're saying, some of these changes make it to the high school and possibly youth levels as well. But I never, fully understood why the women's game was halves instead of quarters. So I feel like this is a good step, as you're saying, by the NCAA. Quarters obviously giving you the opportunity to game plan a little bit more strategically in between, quarters rather than being held to just a halftime adjustment. And then with that shot clock, I'm all for making the game faster and more efficient. So I like the idea of making the shot clock shorter off offensive rebounds. And we'll see both rules, among others, implemented in both games this coming spring. And as Dan is saying as well, in the fall when we start to see fall ball into full effect. And another thing that I like the idea of is Sean Goldsmith entering the transfer portal and the possibility that we could see him this coming spring suited up with the likes of the North Carolina Tar Heels or the Duke Blue Devils or the Virginia Cavaliers or one of these other ACC, Big Ten, or Big East powerhouses. I'd imagine the ACC schools would have to be at the top of his list, but there's a ton of high-profile names still out there in the pool. We've seen a few of them already find new homes, but Dan, a guy with a skill set like Goldsmith's, who was, I should say, unfortunately limited in 2021 due to an injury, a guy that can probably take a winning program like UNC or Duke and get them over that hump here and get to that championship game. Where do you see Goldsmith landing? And as I'd imagine, he's already been finding, or probably fielding phone calls, I should say, from some of the top programs in the country.
I think it's an interesting case. Like, I know, out of the gate, I know there are moments where Goldsmith can be like a bit of a meme in the Lax Twitter world. Like, we love to have fun with his photo, and he's at Mercer and everything, and the Mercer Hive is one of the more fun groups that's on Lax Twitter. But before COVID ended the season before this one prematurely, the guy leading the nation in goals wasn't Sowers or Gray or any of these other guys. It was Sean Goldsmith. And again, I know he's playing for Mercer. He's not playing an ACC schedule or an Ivy schedule or any of that. But he's still got to go out there and score the goals. And that's not something that just anybody can do, just rack up 5, 6, 7 goals every time he goes out. So, he can score. And there are teams that are going to be in the market for the services of a guy who can pile in goals like he can. I think the power conferences, as it were, the ACCs of the world, would be schools that are on his radar. I think it would be interesting to see if the guys up in Syracuse are trying to turn over their personnel a little bit with a whole new coaching staff, and see if maybe somebody like that is a fit for them, where he can come in and he's a reliable goal scorer who's not going to need the ball a ton from guys you already have that are established as key pieces like Hiltz and stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of schools where he's just a fit because he's not like a superstar. He scores like he could be a superstar, but this isn't Sowers in the portal. This isn't Gray going from BU to UNC. But I hope he winds up somewhere where we get to watch him play regularly on TV because at Mercer you kind of have to seek them out. You go to the sort of Google a link to a stream, or like we have fans periscoping their games if you want to try to get a glimpse of Goldsmith scoring goals. I hope he goes to a place where we can step up from that a little bit. We see we get Anish and the guys calling a couple Goldsmith goals here and there in the ACC this year. But he can score really, really well. He's a great offensive weapon, and if that's your skill set, is that you can get your own shot and you can shoot really well and score consistently 5-6 goals a game, whatever it is, then there's a lot of teams in college lacrosse that are in the market for a guy like you. So, I think that the cream of the crop is up there. I could also see him winding up, at a more sort of middle of the road, but maybe a name program, like a school like Michigan might come to mind. Again, not necessarily that he's going to go there, but as an example of kind of the tier of school that could be, a fit for him where, a big step up in strength of conference. Michigan, I hate to break it to you, Wolverine fans, probably isn't winning the Big Ten this spring. They're not going to be a contender, but he's a good fit there in terms of a piece they could use on the offensive end and a big step up in program strength. So I hope he goes to a place where we get to watch him on TV and we get to have some more fun with him. I'm thrilled that he's going to be in college and playing for another year. I hope he's healthy and comes back from whatever the ailment was that kept him out of most of this past year. But it was exciting to see his name there. I know a lot of people immediately were just like, "Oh man, we get to see Goldsmith." If you want to play for a natty, you got to bring Goldsmith in. He's the guy you need. He's the piece you're missing right now. I know I'll be glued to it to see where he winds up.
Which that's more, Dan, what I was going for. Obviously, you kind of danced around it. Dan just wants to see Goldsmith on national TV every weekend. Right. Jordan, you look at kind of like a UNC, putting Goldsmith alongside a Chris Gray, or maybe even go to a UVA. You put a Goldsmith alongside all the pieces, Matt Moore, Connor Schellenberger, all the pieces that Virginia obviously has coming back, or maybe even a Maryland. They're bringing back a handful of pieces. Where do you see Goldsmith kind of falling here in this portal process?
I'll throw a wild card out to you. Penn State. Okay. Why not go there? You can potentially be the man, essentially, with Mac O'Keefe gone. You have a program let's say, took a step back, but you're going to play for a coach in Jeff Tambroni, who's been there, done that. That staff with Hollis and now Mike Murphy being there. They have the potential to get you to a national championship. Could be a fit if you still want to, like you talked about, Dan, you want to go to a Big Ten school, get that national attention, sort of get more eyes on you, easier to watch your games. And you could still potentially have somewhat of your same role at Mercer where you were the guy. Now, being the guy in the Big Ten and being the guy at Mercer are two different things, but that's just a wild card. Realistically, I could certainly see UNC being an option. I mean, you look at their offense as a whole, just right there with Chris Gray. I mean, you get an opportunity to go play with a guy like him. You're going to have a chance to win a national title. And he's a guy, is he going to have one more year of eligibility or two? I believe.
I'm going to say one because he did two at BU.
Or not, Chris Gray. Goldsmith. But regardless, just having a chance for a year to go win a title with playing with Chris Gray, that's certainly going to be hard to pass up. So if I had to take my realistic guess, if we were going to a sports book and put money on it, I'd put my money on UNC.
There we go. I know Goldsmith definitely, I believe, has 1 year left on his of eligibility. Gray as well, 1 year left. So we'll see. Maybe we'll see them suiting up together this year. That would definitely be exciting. But Sean Goldsmith is just the latest name to graze that NCAA transfer portal, and we will follow that as he looks for a new place to play this coming spring. But again, a ton of talent still available in that pool, and we'll be following any and all updates from the transfer portal. All right, time to dive into the PLL as the playoff push is officially on. We have 5 games this weekend, followed by 6 games in Week 8 in Albany to wrap up the 2021 regular season, as the battle for the number 1 seed is on. The number 7 and final playoff spot also remains up for grabs, and the field ahead of the quarterfinals and ensuing playoff rounds is still to be determined, and frankly wide open as all the teams are still within kind of 2 games of each other. But we should get a better idea following this weekend slate of games, which we will see the Atlas take on Chrome on Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. The Archers will play the Redwoods Saturday at 7 p.m., followed by the Water Dogs and Whipsnakes at 10. So some late night lacrosse there on both Friday and Saturday night for us on the East Coast. And then on Sunday, we'll see the Chaos and Chrome at 2 p.m. Eastern, followed by the Atlas and the Cannons, as the Cannons try to put themselves in a better spot ahead of their final game in Week 8 as they sit at the bottom of the standings, a half game behind the Chrome and Chaos for that 7th seed. We also got some huge transaction news to kick off the week, and we will get to that as we get through these teams and matchups. So we're recording this on Monday night, as Jordan mentioned there before. I'm getting wisdom teeth pulled on Tuesday, and we won't be recording another show because of that between now and the weekend. So if anything comes out following the recording and release of this show, I guess we'll just get to it next week's PLL Flash next Tuesday, and then Goal Line Extended on Friday. But let's start with these matchups, because there's a ton of playoff implications on the line this weekend and then obviously into next weekend. And let's start with the Chrome, because they made a huge splash on Monday night right before we started recording for this show by signing attackman Dylan Malloy, who's been unsigned all season up to this point, which is sort of a head scratcher given the fact that he's a former Tewaaraton winner just a few years ago. He's not too far removed from dominating in the MLL, but ladies and gentlemen, Dylan Malloy has been signed, and all of the rumors and jokes aside, this is a huge move for both parties, as Malloy, a great attackman in the game of lacrosse, is now in the PLL after opting to play in the MLL ahead of the 2018 season. And the Chrome, who have been rattled by injuries all season, get some much-needed attack help ahead of their playoff push and the second and final doubleheader of the season for them. They currently sit in 6th place with 3 goals separating them and the Chaos from that 7th and final spot in the playoffs, and they'll play the Atlas on Friday night, and then they'll get the chance to control their own destiny per se against the Chaos on Sunday. But Dan, a huge move by Coach Sudo here ahead of Week 7 to bring in Dylan Malloy, as well as a familiar face in Donnie Moss in the midfield. But focusing on Malloy, what does he bring to the table and offer to this Chrome offense that they might have been lacking thus far this season?
Yeah, I've kind of been on record. I thought Malloy, I think he's been a good fit for them for weeks. Basically as soon as Jordan Wolf went down, I was like, all right, it's time to sign Dylan Malloy. I was thrilled to see that news come across. I think pro lacrosse is better as a whole when Dylan Malloy's playing it. In terms of how he fits with the Chrome, I think he's on brand for them, and I think physically this team is going to be very challenging to deal with. Right, Malloy is a wrecking ball of an attackman who can overpower. If you don't have a defenseman who's ready to play physical, mean, like aggressive, just you're going to leave this game very sore style of defense, then you're not going to be able to handle a guy like Dylan Malloy. And he's going to be on the field with some other seriously, physical, aggressive, beefy players like Heacock and John Rannigan. This is a team that has the ability now to offensively to punish you. And they needed, an injection. They needed a spark of goal scoring ability on the offense. I think their last game out, they had 6 goals or whatever it was against the Water Dogs.
McIntosh scored 4 of them.
Yeah, they had 8 against the Archers in a game that they won. But I think in their last 4 games, I think they've only managed double digits once or something like that. I think they got to 10. So they needed a spark, and it's they're dealing with serious injury issues. That's well documented, and Sudo and every other leader on that team will tell you nobody feels bad for us. But this is a big move for them. And I'm happy that we get to see him. I'm hoping he's being signed so that he can dress immediately, and we get to see him on Friday night. I think Dylan Malloy in prime time making his debut would be a ton of fun, especially against the Atlas, who's going to be playing for prime playoff position. They have, I think, the best track at the 1 seed. So the Chrome have spoiled some seasons already. They handed the Archers a loss. They've stuck it to the Whipsnakes. So they can play that spoiler role when you think that they can't hang because they're too hurt, they're too banged up, they don't have the pieces right now. That's when they'll punish you. And I think there's a chance maybe we see it Friday. I would love to see Dylan Malloy in the starting lineup out there, mixing it up again. He'll probably wind up dealing with a guy like Rexroad, and that'll be fun. That'll be a physical, let's knock each other out, dating myself, but like a Tyson Holyfield, just battle for 10 rounds, and just whoever has fewer bruises at the end wins.
Absolutely. The Chrome seem to have just gotten much better on the offensive end with this addition of Dylan Malloy. And Jordan, it's really, as Dan was saying, the opportunity to just punch you in the mouth. You're just bringing in another big body that can make, just cause just mayhem really on the offensive end to an opposing defense. And it's, as Dan's saying, really exciting. Hopefully we do see him, though, in this starting lineup this weekend. I would hope, as you're saying, for Friday, because the Chrome, they've been battling injuries all season. But Jordan, they, as Dan said, got their 2 wins against the undefeated Archers and against the undefeated Whipsnakes. So something that we'll be watching for this weekend. Can they knock off the Atlas, who have won 3 straight?
Just to be sort of a pointer / smartass to Dan's point, the whole thing in this league has been chemistry, and bringing in a guy this late in the year, are we going to mess with chemistry? Okay, let me shut up now. It's Dylan Malloy. Like, this does great wonders for this Chrome offense. I can't say any more, but if you really have to play spoiler to this point, you do wonder, just bringing in another guy late in the year, is it too little too late? With a guy like Dylan Malloy, I say no right now, but you truly never know how these things can fold out. But like I said, I'm excited to hopefully see him on Friday night, and he's just going to do wonders for this Chrome offense. You can slide him in pretty much at any attack spot you want, and you can move pieces around, whether it's a Heacock that you can move back to the midfields if you need for a guy like Malloy, or if you need to move a Kevin Rogers around. So Malloy fits this Chrome team, as Dan mentioned, and I look forward to seeing him.
We've seen Kevin Rogers playing some attack. Jordan McIntosh has been playing some attack there for the Chrome. So definitely the opportunity to kind of move some guys around within the midfield with Dylan Malloy there anchoring as the attackman. And as Dan mentioned too, we heard news recently of the loss of Jordan Wolf for the remainder of the season. So definitely a big addition here is Dylan Malloy.
Yeah, and I think I think a guy that could really help is Justin Gutterding, who
Yes.
has not had a Gutty-esque season. And he's getting a ton of attention because everyone knows kind of right now, like, all right, listen, if Heacock beats us by himself, I guess okay, but we're not going to let Gutterding beat us. I would say that if Dylan Malloy is out there and Gutterding is too, Malloy is going to draw the top matchup, and if he doesn't, then it's going to be a matter of time until he does. He's going to be a more physical, imposing, and aggressive dodger, I think, than a Gutterding might be. So I think that would be helpful, and again, like to the point of chemistry, I don't know if the Chrome really have any this year. Like the lineup is shuffled too much for them to really have a steady group of offensive guys that aren't moving from spot to spot, or guys getting hurt. Or I got to play out of position. Am I going to move Crotty here? Am I going to move Heacock there? I think Gutterding's less than stellar season, that again, not the usual Gutterding caliber season. I think that's a symptom of that, is we have to move guys around. Guys have to step into roles they're not used to because we're dealing with so many injuries and guys in and out. So, if I'm Pseudo, I'm not too worried about disrupting offensive chemistry or flow, because we don't have a ton right now. We got too many guys moving all over the place. Like, what's the worst thing that I could happen is I still have to shuffle some guys? Well, I could have done that without adding Dylan Malloy. So if I'm going to do it, I'm happy I'm going to do it with him in my 6 rather than with him in the player pool.
Absolutely. There was a ton of, obviously, the conversation on Lack's Twitter. The sign, Malloy, it has finally happened. We're looking forward to seeing him suiting up this weekend, hopefully in the PLL. Again, the Chromes still have 3 games left to play. They're 2-4, sit in 6th place, separated by 3 goals, which is separating them in the chaos from 6th and 7th place. They're a half game ahead of the Cannon, so an important weekend here for the Chrome against the Atlas and against the Chaos on Sunday. And then I believe they have the Cannons there in week 8 out in Albany to close their season. So an important 3 games here for the Chrome. Hopefully Dylan Malloy comes in and helps them out in big ways as we expect him to do. Let's move on to the Whipsnakes because as the time of this recording, they're the only other team to make a move so far this week, and that was the signing of undrafted rookie midfielder Will Perry out of UNC, likely to replace the loss of Chris Hogan, who on Monday was announced to have signed with the New Orleans Saints. So Hogan returning to the NFL with the injury of Michael Thomas there for the Saints. A short stint here in the PLO for the 2-time Super Bowl champion, but the Whipsnakes in somewhat of uncharted territory don't exactly, have their back, their backs are to the wall right now. Not exactly, but in a way, they're in a position that they're not entirely used to as they sit in 4th place with a negative scoring differential, and they'll play the War Dogs, who are hot off back-to-back wins in Week 5. Jordan, how do you see this Whipsnakes team faring this weekend ahead of a doubleheader next weekend in the final regular season weekend of the season? And then obviously Chris Hogan now playing with the Saints. We don't know his status right now with the Whipsnakes.
Well, against the Water Dogs, I think they have a real chance to bounce back. Look, we'll have to see what happens with the injury reports when they come out. The signing of Will Perry makes me seriously wonder what the status of Matt Abbott is, injury or not, just because they are, in comparison, sort of the same type of player. Even if you're bringing him in with Abbott back, I love the move because he's sort of a plug-and-play kind of player where he's going to give you a little bit offensively. He's going to give you a little bit. He can sort of figure his way out on defense too. He's one. But against the Water Dogs team here, if the Whipsnakes are fully healthy, we've seen the Instagram stories of Matt Rambo without a cast. So is that a precursor? I don't know if we're in the business of doing Instagram stories telling injury reports, but if you get a guy like Matt Rambo back, and even if they don't, a guy like TJ Camizio in attack sneakily played well against the Redwoods, and just having him back in the lineup for another week, even without a Rambo, and maybe with the week off, you get a fully healthy Zed, that alone could do wonders for the Whipsnakes. And we're gonna have our flash picks out later in the week, and even before this injury report comes out, I'm tempted to pick the Whipsnakes right now.
Yeah, we won't be making picks here in today's show just because obviously we are recording this on Monday. We won't be having anything coming out during the week, so our picks will be available on Friday night before that game. But yeah, Dan, just building off what Jordan said, Hogan probably not, or not, I can't even say probably not. We don't know the full extent there of what his situation is. Obviously, looking like he's going to try to get back into the NFL. But the Whipsnakes could use a big win here this weekend against the War Dogs, both teams with 4 wins.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm the New Orleans Saints and I'm signing Chris Hogan, I'm telling him you are not picking up a lacrosse stick. I didn't sign you so you can go get hurt in the PLL. That's not how this works. So I would say Chris Hogan is back to the NFL, and that'll be that. I don't think it serves anyone to have some kind of like back and forth where he's in the NFL one week and he's in the PLL the next, and he's not going to be a meaningful, productive player in 2 leagues at once. Bo Jackson, he is not. So, I think it's the Saints for him. For the injury report, I think, I would think, or I would hope that Rambo is back this week. Another guy who's going to be an impact player in this game, who I think is going to be back this week, I've heard he's pretty close, and there's a good chance he plays, is Michael Sowers. I think Michael Sowers might get cleared for the Water Dogs, and that's a boost for them. They've been playing really well as it is. Injecting him into a lineup, I think, can really elevate them at attack. I don't know if you want to disrupt Ben Reeves too much because he's been so good lately. But if you can have Sowers out there to occupy a Matt Dunn or a Tim Muller and just bump the matchups to different places where they might be more beneficial to the rest of your attack. I think, getting the number 2 overall pick back and a guy like him, if he can in fact go this weekend, is a huge boost for the Water Dogs. And that's certainly something to watch down the stretch.
And here's another.
I was going to say for the Whips, I think the Perry signing I think is a good one, or the Perry addition is a good one. I think we'll probably see Matt Abbott back this week. They also added Nick Manis recently, so I think the Maryland guys love Manis. If he can get in the lineup for them as a two-way midi, I think they'll be feeling pretty good there between Abbott and Manis. And then they still have Charlie Hayes. Bernhardt can play two ways. But a place where I could see Perry kind of fitting for them is Perry at North Carolina, and especially this past year, showed you he was the best, if not the best, one of the top 2, 3, maybe 5 middies in the country when it came to being just a quality shooter. Like, doesn't need a ton of space, can get a shot off, and can sting all parts of the net, various release points, everything you want from a time and space shooter. And a guy who hasn't given them the Whipsnakes that this year has been Chanonchuk. Chanonchuk's only hit 1-2 this year. He's taken 13, so he's shooting 8% from 2-point range. And this is the guy who you usually count on to be like the king of the 2-ball in the PLL. I know other guys get more Instagram highlights and pub and everything. If I need a 2 hit to save my life, I'm probably having Channy take it. But this year, he just hasn't been able to get him in at the clip that we're used to seeing. I think Perry can do that for them. I think Perry has 2-point range. I think he can play and hunt shooting lanes for himself. He doesn't need to dodge to find those. Channy can do that, but Perry doesn't have to. With some of the other pieces, again, if they're healthy, if they have Rambo, if they have Zed and some of these other guys, I think being able to look to Perry for some depth on the offensive end, who can hit 2s for you, gives that element of 2-point threat back to their offense where they haven't had it, from a guy like Chanonchuk as much as they have in the past. So, I really like the signing from that point of view. But, the health, if everybody's healthy, if everybody's coming back and feeling good after all this time off, then I think this game could be really actually a pretty special one of the better games of the week.
And just to piggyback off your point and add one more thing to it, I mentioned it on the last show here. The 2 goalies for the Whipsnakes, I would assume that Kyle Bernlohr is likely going to get the start coming off the All-Star game, coming off that performance in the goalie competition. But you saw Brian Phipps take the second half of the game against the Redwoods, and he didn't play terrible. I mean, it wasn't great. You're going up against a Redwoods team that was hot, and you're coming into the game cold. I brought up the idea on the last show of a 2-goalie system, and I think should Bernlohr struggle again, it might be something, once again, that Stags might have to consider. Look, you saw the Archers back in 19 and in the bubble sort of run with it. It made sense. They won games off of it. Can it carry into the playoffs? Maybe. With these 2 guys being vets that have been there, done that, they both won championships. They're 2 of the guys that I would say if you had to, they could certainly handle it one way or another. But it's just something to watch out for. Now, as I say this, Kyle Bernlohr might come out and have 20 saves, and this idea gets nullified. But, if he does struggle early on, I do think that's something to watch out for.
But absolutely, 2-time defending PLO champion though, Kyle Bernlohr. I don't know if he's going to take too happily
I think he'll probably have Michael Earhart and Matt Abbott and some of these guys back in front of him again this weekend, and a little more quality at the defensive midfield spot. So I think he'll be in a better position to make some more saves. But I would agree that that in recent weeks, Bernlohr has been maybe a little step down from where we're used to seeing him. But again, I think when you have an Earhart back in the lineup healthy, assuming Earhart's in the lineup, and their full complement of D middies, I think that group as a 6 plus Bernhardt or plus Bernlohr, has so much chemistry, and they've been together basically, for years at this point, going back even more years if you want to go into their college days. I think that unit is so tight. That's what makes them as good as they are. I wouldn't be in a hurry to disrupt it unless I was really in trouble. I think Bernlor has earned the trust to be like, you've had a couple bad weeks in a row. We're going to put your guys back in front of you, and we're going to let you, go back out there again and be yourself for us. We trust you to bounce back. If he winds up going 40% and they lose, then I think it's time to maybe have that conversation and start looking at Phipps. But, I think he's earned a very long leash.
We will see how the Whip Snakes handle. Obviously, hopefully, as you're saying, hopefully you should be getting some defensive help back in Mike Earhart, in Charlie Hayes. So something that we will watch for this coming weekend as the Whip Snakes will take on the Water Dogs. Let's move on to Ben Rubier's Atlas as they sit in third place as a result of the score differential, and they will play their final doubleheader of the season this coming weekend against two teams at the bottom of the table. And as Dan mentioned before, kind of the easiest, remaining schedule here ahead of the playoffs is the Atlas. They have the Chrome on Friday night, and then the Cannons, who are currently out of the playoff picture, on Sunday. And then next week they will have the Water Dogs, who are still obviously up there. They're up there in the rankings. They're currently in second place, so a spot ahead of the Atlas by way of the goal differential. But a chance here, Jordan, for the Atlas to add on 2 more wins, and with that they would take sole possession of first place if they are to win both games this weekend, regardless of what happens in the Redwoods game and between the Water Dogs and Whip Snakes on Sunday. So a lot riding on these 2 games for the Atlas. They look like they should be fully healthy, and that's obviously great news for Coach Rubier and co.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, look, I'm going to ride with my sort of take in the past show that I believe that Cans are going to win out. With that being said, though, I still think they are maybe 1 or 2 defensive moves away from really being a complete team. I'm interested to see how they do approach Jeff Teat, having seen him now once, and just how do you approach the second time? Is he a guy that you double? Because I don't think they fully decided that they needed to cut the double guy like Jeff Teat until it was too late. In that first game, which, I mean, coming off that first game, you can pick and choose your spots, especially with that Atlas offense as a whole. But now we know who Jeff Teat is as a player, and he's certainly a guy that's going to command a lot of attention, which, the beneficiary are the guys like Jake Caraway, Eric Law, and Romar Dennis, right? So I think we're in for another high-scoring affair with these teams. You talk about getting the Cannons getting fully healthy with Lyle, hopefully sort of getting healthy. I know he talked about on Gibson's podcast how that's sort of his worst injury that he's ever had. So is he fully healthy? I don't know, but even, as we saw against the Archers, Lyle playing at, whether it's 60, 70%, can still go put up 5 goals on any given day. So, hopefully those vets are healthy for the Cannons, and I still expect this to be a high-scoring affair because, frankly, and this is more so on the Cannons, their defense, even playing well against the Archers, they quite haven't, frankly, shown enough for me to trust them defensively. Should they make a couple moves? Maybe so. Should they come out play differently early on? I have more trust in them, but if I were betting this game, I'd bet the over.
Okay, obviously we're looking at this matchup here. The Atlas, obviously, with 2 games next weekend. They got the Chrome, or this weekend, I should say. They got the Chrome on Friday, followed by the Cannons on Sunday. And Jordan, last show you mentioned possibly a trade here. With that trade deadline coming up very quickly, it will be next Friday, so the Friday following Week 7, August 6th at 2 p.m. Eastern, the official date. You had mentioned a trade, obviously, with the Atlas and Cannons involving Tucker Durkin. Obviously, the Cannons trying to maybe get some more help there on the defensive end. But, Dan, you look at this Atlas team, retool, and we didn't – obviously, you said it in our last PLL Flash. Obviously, I put it up today on the Lacrosse Flash Twitter. So, we didn't expect this team to kind of in 2 weeks – get accumulated to the speed of the game, to the new rules, obviously, that the PLL brings. And it took the Atlas 2 weeks, not a full season, to get adjusted here to these rules.
Yeah. I had said, the last time we were out, just how far basically ahead of schedule they are. When you think about what a typical V-build looks like in the pro sports landscape, the idea of doing it in 1 year where you ship out everybody, draft capital, make some picks and then basically you're spending a year with those picks, with your young guys, learning to play together, adjusting the speed. That kind of thing, especially in pro lacrosse, to be honest, takes a lot of time. And the Atlas are making it look like it doesn't. Like it's just really easy to do. So far the only thing that can stop Jeff Teat is a travel restriction. If he's on the field, he's going to hurt you. I think that Chrome game, it'll be interesting to see how the Chrome try and handle him. I think Mike Manley has been a outstanding cover guy this year. He's a 2-time Pro Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, he's been an outstanding cover defender for a long time. He plays a very physical, punishing style of defense. And, it'll be something where how Teat responds to that, all up in your business kind of defense, how he handles that. At Cornell, when he got face guarded, he kind of just took his man away, and that was that. He didn't necessarily, try and take control or get himself back into a rhythm. This is obviously a very different situation, and there's going to be a different, coaching style to it, where I would imagine they're going to try and still get him involved. But, the Manley approach would be an interesting one. And then, we saw the Cannons try Goodrich on Teat as well. And, it worked a couple times. It didn't work some others. It's a testament to Jeff Teat is that he can run by Zach Goodrich, which the list of guys who can do that, you can probably count on one hand, one finger. So, I think, do you try a Terefenko there, right? Terefenko put the clamps on Connor Fields. Like he's reached a level as a short stick defensive midfielder that is as elite as any in the game. You're playing with fire because putting him on Teat means you're shorting Jeff Teat. You have to really trust him. But I think that rookie-on-rookie matchup of Teat and Terefenko would be a ton of fun. So I hope we see that set up, a couple times, maybe Friday night. But this Atlas team, I think it's reasonable to think that they can go 2-0 this weekend. I don't know how I'm going to eat my words on it because this is just something that happens to me lately. I have no idea how the Cannons are going to stop the Atlas from scoring. None. Like the Atlas offense is just so much better than what the Cannons are sending out on D. And I know that the win over the Archers in Morocco played great and made big saves, but I think I had said it. But for that to happen, what the Cannons also needed to happen was Will Manny, Marcus Holman, and Tom Schreiber all missed gimmies in the last minute of that game. All missed on shots they usually score on, or Morocco made incredible saves. And you can't keep coming down to
9 times out of 10.
That's not going to be a winning formula. Is all three of those guys get a really good look and we win. That doesn't happen very often. So the defense, like Jordan said, needs to be better. I don't know if they'll try and make a move this week. Like you just said, the trade deadline is Friday, a week from Friday, I should say, at 2 p.m. It doesn't mean they can't make a trade tomorrow and add somebody to get them some help this weekend. But, I think they'll need a good team, 6-on-6 scheme and formula to try and deal with how are we going to get, number one, to Jeff Teat early, so that he's not just running by guys and creating. Once he gets moving and he's running through your defense with his eyes up, it's too late. You're done. So how are we going to address that? And then how are we going to protect skip lanes? Because once Jeff Teat, again, is playing with his eyes up, he is finding Caraway and Law and Costabile from range. And, when that starts happening, it's if you're trying to react, it's too late. You need to be a proactive on defense. So how they're going to, how the Cannons can handle doing that, I don't know. Their defense hasn't shown me this year that they're capable of stopping an offense that dynamic. They could try and outscore it. If Lyle goes out there again and has another 10-point game or a 9-point game and he's feeling healthy after the time off, then you give him a shot at saying they can outscore it. I think Rex Rhodes having a great year. I wouldn't ever bet on anybody to shut out Lyle Thompson twice in the same season. So, we'll see how that matchup goes. But as of now, I think the Atlas, again, like we've said, so far ahead of schedule. They're so young. They have a ton of draft picks still because they accumulated draft picks in this coming draft. So, I think a 2-0 this weekend, and then if they can get a win against the Water Dogs, that'll make them the 1 seed. and they'll be a team with a bye week into the semifinals at a team that early in the season we thought they looked like a team that needed a year to gel, and they clearly don't. They're looking like the toast of the league right now.
Coming into the season, it was kind of like the Atlas. They might be, towards the bottom where the Cannons are right now, kind of in contention, trying to fight for one of those bottom playoff spots. Now we're here talking about the Atlas looking to lock up the number 1 seed. They probably at this point have the easiest schedule to do so. The Whipsnakes have a pretty tough schedule here coming towards the end of the season. They got the Redwoods and the Archers. The Redwoods have the Whipsnakes and the Archers, Redwoods, Whipsnakes. So those teams all with kind of a tough slate here coming up over these last 2 weeks of the regular season, but the Atlas definitely with an easier trip. And you said there before, I wouldn't bet on Michael Rexroad shutting down Lyle. I wouldn't bet on Michael Rexroad shutting down Lyle Thompson once, and he did do that. But to see him do it twice, something I don't think we'll see happen. But Lyle Thompson, as we're saying, hopefully is healthy coming off these injuries. There's other names as well. I mean, we talked about Matt Rambo and Mike Earhart before, but Paul Rabel was banged up going to the weekend. Blaze Reardon going into the All-Star weekend as well. So hopefully we see all those guys healthy. But the Atlas come into Week 7 on a 3-game winning streak, as I mentioned before. We'll see if they can extend that to 4 or possibly 5 this weekend in Colorado, led by this young core that has exploded in recent weeks to lead this team to solid outing after solid outing. Let's move on to the Chaos. As I mentioned there before, Blaze Reardon hopefully will be back in between the pipes for this Chaos team after being put on that injury report. A long injury report it was ahead of the All-Star game, but we're hoping that we'll see him healthy here against the Cannons this coming weekend. And Jordan, this is a must-win game really for both of these teams, but we're just looking at the Chaos. This is a must-win game. They're both Cannons and Chaos at -12 in the goal scoring differential, but holding it just by half a game. So this is an important weekend for the Chaos ahead of a doubleheader there in Week 8 in Albany.
Yeah, for the Chaos, I'm really interested to see how their offense comes about. We're talking about chemistry and offenses earlier, and really the only sort of chemistry the Chaos have really had on offense is sort of the Byrne, Dane Smith, and Kluche, and that's sort of a hit or miss. Sometimes they have it, sometimes they don't. I'm interested to see how a guy like Bryce Wasserman gets involved again. He didn't really get. I shouldn't really say again because he didn't really get much involved in Minnesota per se, but hopefully with another weekend, maybe he gets involved. Maybe he's a difference maker. Still trying to figure out sort of his fit within that offense. But he is another guy who, again, he can dodge at. Maybe they bring him out of the midfield. They were kind of sort of running him on that sort of second attack line or second midfield in Minnesota. And and not really much production. And we'll see how he does in another week. Obviously Blaze, we all know that Blaze sees way too many shots, and the Chaos are another team on defense who could certainly use some help. I flirted with the idea of moving Jarrett Newman up to LSM. Maybe that could also give them a burst sort of on offense, sort of his run and gun style. And frankly, I mean, Jack Rowlett, hopefully he's back coming off the broken nose. With a guy like him in the lineup, he's going to certainly do wonders for their defense. But with the Chaos, they're a team that I really want to see them come out. It's 50-50 with them. They're a team that they can get hot. When they look good, they're really good. But when they look bad, it's really bad. So, yeah. That's what I'm really interested to see with this Chaos team.
With the Chaos, I think you wind the clock back a year, and you kind of look at when they made their kind of their leap on offense, right? When they sparked, and after that awful start in the bubble, they kind of, oh my God, this offensive explosion. When they shuffled their offensive lineup, one of their more dynamic groupings was this setup with Stotts and Dixon and Byrne, and they're 1 for 3 on those guys being in the lineup for them right now. We know what happened with Stotts. Dixon has still not been cleared to travel, getting to and from the States. is not easy for some of our Canadian counterparts. So, it's burn out there. And there's been moments where they have an offensive group, like Jordan said, with I think Dane Smith has been really good. Burns been solid. Kluche has been good for them. They're working in Mac O'Keefe into parts of the field where he can be dangerous, especially from two, and trying to get him time and room shots. But we'll see kind of how they adapt that offense this week and how they try and again shuffle. I really do think they're missing guys like Curtis Dixon. I think his absence this year just cannot be understated. And I think they were probably counting on Rodgers to do a lot for them too. They haven't had him in the lineup as a guy they took in the entry draft. Who I think anybody who's watched the NLL and even watched the MLL bubble last season knows what he's capable of and what kind of damage he could do in this chaos offense. He's not able to travel, but I would like to see a little more from Tanner Cook maybe this week. I know he's cleared to be with the team, so he's in the lineup. He was a draft pick where when I saw his game and team that took him, I thought this is a perfect match. This is a guy where they can, if they wanted to try and get crazy, they could run that Penn State pick down motion with Cook and with O'Keefe to try and give Cook a matchup issue, run him out of an invert, give Mac O'Keefe a shorty switch to him, try and create space for him. Those kind of opportunities are there for them. So I think that's going to be something where you want to see how they work that guy in, and you hope that they start having a little more success facing off. I think that's another key for the face-off, or for the chaos, I should say, is, I think there isn't anybody out there who thought after the offseason that the chaos were going to need help at the face-off spot. This is a team that added Kyle Gallagher, that added Max Adler. Those were basically some of the top pieces available at the spot, we thought, and they just haven't been able to get consistent possession for their team. So, you want that spot to do better, and I think that's going to be a big problem for the chaos if they can't get any better there, because again, like Jordan said, Blaze is seeing way too many shots. Their defense hasn't been playing great. A way you can alleviate that is just winning more faceoffs and having the ball more. So if Adler can get into a rhythm maybe, or whoever they decide to go with this week, whether it's Adler or Gallagher, I think that is a way that you can kind of address a defensive deficiency. So there's a lot there in terms of what the chaos has to do to get a win. But like you said at the top, this is a playoff game for these teams, right? I mean, Lyle said it last week, but the playoffs have officially started for the chaos and the Cannons. And if you lose this one, it's going to be tough to especially if you're the Cannons and you've already played 7 games. You drop this one, you're really going to be in a tough spot if you're going to try and make the playoffs.
The Cannons are in a tough spot. I'm looking at their schedules right now. We know the Chaos, if they are to lose this game, they've got the Archers next, or the Friday the 13th, so of Week 8, the Friday of Week 8. They've got the Archers and then the Redwoods on that Sunday. So not an easy go here for the Chaos over these final 2 weeks. For the Cannons, they'll have Chrome next week, so somewhat of an easier game, just kind of looking at how the standings are shaking out. The Chrome obviously is currently in 6th place at 2-4 there, so an easier one there for the Cannons to say, obviously this week being that they got the Atlas, so we'll see how those games all shake out, but definitely looking at this Chaos team could use some help there on the defensive end. We said coming into the season, could use face-off help. They drafted the only face-off specialist drafted in the entry. They took Max Adler. He was the only face-off specialist drafted there in the entry draft, and they got Kyle Gallagher fairly early in the college draft. So was hoping to address the face-off issues, still working to see if they can address those problems. Let's look ahead here to the final game that we have not talked about yet, the Redwoods and the Archers, and this is kind of setting up for a great one because we got the Redwoods currently in first place. They're 4-2 with a +8 goal differential, while the Archers are 3-3. They won their first 3 games. They've since dropped their last 3, all by a single goal, though, and their goal differential is still +22, which is by far the highest in the league, though the Redwoods are the second highest at +8, so +8 to +22. That's a 16 goal difference there that the Archers have an advantage. So the Archers really in a really good position despite being a game back. Jordan, how do you see this game kind of shaping out? An important game for both teams as they'll both have a doubleheader next week. Or in 2 weeks, I should say, in Week 8. They'll both play the Whipsnakes there in Week 8. They'll, tough. This is it. This is crunch time here for both of these teams, even though they're safe in terms of playoff positioning. They're trying to fight for these number one spots and for the seeding for the playoffs.
Well, yeah, certainly. Before the bye week, I talked about the Redwoods sort of now hitting their stride and whatnot as a team. I'm interested to see coming off that bye, different teams, they're going to come out firing. Or are you going to sort of come out rusty? With a team like the Redwoods, I hope, or I say just for the sake of that pick I made last week, that they continue their momentum. As they had coming into the bye week. And look, at the face-off, a guy like TD is going to win you possessions, right? So, defensively is where I'm really focused on for the Redwoods. How do you attack that Archers offense? I mean, if you have them firing on all cylinders, they are essentially unstoppable. Just ask the Water Dogs and just ask the Atlas and the rest of the league. But yeah. I'm really interested to see just matchup-wise, too. Who do you put on Tom Schreiber? And then when you do that, who do you put on Grant Ament? I would imagine you're going to put Epple on Schreiber, which, that's a 50-50 matchup in my mind, On Epple's best day, he wins that matchup 90% of the time, but on Tom Schreiber's best day, he wins that matchup 99% of the time. So I'm really just interested to see those individual matchups. The Archers had the advantage when it comes to the LSMs with Ratliff and Connors. Interested to see how the Redwoods approach that too, especially on the wings, where a guy like Bones Kelly, I think, is going to try and give TD a run for his money and not just let him win the clamp. He's going to try and make it more of a ground ball hustle, sort of deal, which guys like Jared Connors are great at. But the Redwoods did add a guy in Kyle Hartzell who could be used in that way should he dress in this game. And then the Redwoods offensively, you look at only having 13 goals up against the Whipsnakes, but you talk about putting up 19 against the Redwoods. And Dan's point, there's too many cooks in the kitchen, type of deal that worked out didn't. We'll see. We'll see what we get, as far as this Redwoods offense. I can't finish a point for the life of me. But as far as just seeing how they roll with Rob Pennell coming in, feeding Miles Jones, feeding Perk, you saw that working hand in hand. And even Miles Jones as of late being a feeder himself. And hopefully, a guy that we haven't talked about injury-wise is Ryan Lee, who could really come in and help their offense as a whole. So that's what I'm really interested to watch out for the Redwoods.
Dan, Jordan mentioned it there. Kyle Hartzell is recently signed there by Coach Nat St. Laurent and the Redwoods. How do you expect him, if dressed as obviously Jordan mentioned, how do you expect him to get accumulated here with this Redwoods team and hopefully stopping this high-powered Archers offense?
Yeah, how you deploy Hartzell is kind of interesting. It's sort of right into the fire. I know Hartzell hasn't seen game action in a little while, and if he's dressing, he's going back in against an offense that's gonna welcome you back, and that's for sure. So, if it's me, and I'm scheming for the Woods, I'm probably putting Epple on Ament and just trying to disrupt Ament as a feeder as much as I can. I think Epple's best suited to that, and then I would be fine with sort of Glazner on Holman, as who I would call the least dangerous Dodger of those three, which doesn't make him a badge Dodger. It just means he's not as dangerous in my estimation as Eamon or Manny is. But I'm deploying Hartzell in the midfield. Sexton is still going to be my lead guy, and that's probably where I'm going to guard Schreiber, is just going with a pull there. But I rely, more than individual matchups for this. With the exception of the Epple-Ament matchup, I'm just going to count on Epple to just win there. I'm counting in a big way on Eddie Glazner in this game to be the organizer and the communicator that he's shown himself to be. I think if you go out there hoping that I win 6 one-on-one matchups against the Archers, you're going to lose. You need to win the 6v6, the full scheme versus the full scheme against the Archers if you're going to have a shot. I think Glazner is the best defenseman in the league at positioning a defense to be able to do that. So I think that'll be a ton of fun. I hope Hartzell gets in the mix, and we'll see. If he winds up on Schreiber, if I'm Schreiber, am I attacking that matchup? Absolutely. I'm attacking the guy who hasn't played in the league in months, and I'm seeing if he can still run with me or not. On the other end of the field, I think it'll be interesting to see how Jules is deployed. I think Jules had a ridiculously good first. We call it the first half of the season because we hit the All-Star break, even though there's 2 weeks left, so we're kind of beyond the halfway point here. But that first chunk of the season, Jules is awesome. He was shooting north of 50%. He was drawing slides. He's distributing the ball well. So as long as teams continue to short him, which is something teams have been prone to doing if he's on the field with Miles and Perkovic, then he's going to keep punishing them for doing that. I think if Ryan Lee's back in the lineup, it just amplifies that thing that Jules does really well. And another thing that Jordan mentioned too is this transition from Miles as just physical downhill dodger with 2-point range to Miles the distributor, who's all of a sudden throwing look-away feeds to people who are open on the backside. I think the Redwoods are really in a groove right now. I'm going to take credit for it because that groove started when I said they had too many cooks in the kitchen. So you're welcome, Redwoods fans. But I mean, I say that like tongue in cheek, but honestly, when I said it, this was an offense that had 6 ridiculously good players on the field who all had this habit of watching the other 5 guys. The 5 other guys watch the guy with the ball, just wait for him to do something awesome. They don't do that anymore. Now there's motion, there's movement, there's, like we said, look away feeds from Miles. They're moving defenses in a much more effective way. So I think the Redwoods are in a good groove right now. And honestly, like pick wise, I think I would pick them to win this game. I like where they're at a whole lot more than I like where the Archers are at. So be a fun game. Again, I think the most fun part is going to be Glazner, the field general organizer, against as dynamic as a 6-person unit as we've seen in pro lacrosse in a long time. I think that'll be a ton of fun. I can't wait for those mic'd up segments and everything. So it'll be a fun one. I think a really good matchup is brewing there.
This should be a great game here coming up with the Redwoods and Archers out. We don't have a game of the week yet here for Lacrosse Flash, but I'd imagine that game will be in the running when we get down to discussing it here within our group. But great game coming up this weekend with the Redwoods and the Archers. I know Jordan said a week and a half ago on our last Goal Line Extended, he likes the Redwoods here when it's all said and done to come out with this top seed. We should have right now looking like the Redwoods, the Atlas, the Whipsnakes are all currently 4-2. The Water Dogs are 4-3 with that positive goal differential, putting them up in second place. And then the Archers, as I said last week, plus 22 goal differential. You're kind of in contention until you're mathematically eliminated, wins and losses wise. So, Jordan, do you still like the Redwoods? And then to piggyback off that, Dan, who's your team right now that you would say would come away with the top spot?
Yeah, I'm still going to stick with that Redwoods pick. I haven't had any reason to pick otherwise, and even potentially with a guy like Ryan Lee coming back, maybe, and with that signing of Hartzell, if he does dress, that's just more depth and more help. So, haven't had any other reason to change that pick. So I'm going to roll with it.
Yeah, and I had gone with the Atlas, and I think I'm going to stick with it, even with the wrinkle of they now have to play a Dylan Malloy team on Friday night. I still think of the remaining schedule. When I was texting with some other people about this, we were just looking at who everybody had left. We were like, the Atlas have, who do they have left? It feels sweepish.
Yep.
It feels sweepy. Like it just feels like a 3-0 stretch for them. So again, I'm sure I'm going to eat my words on that, but I'm going to go with the Atlas to close it out with a 3-0 run and go into the playoffs as the hottest team in the league and the number 1 overall seed.
Just complete switch from what we thought coming into the season. We're thinking retooled Atlas. They brought in all these draft picks, all these young guns, rookies. We're thinking they're going to be at the bottom trying to fight for a playoff spot come this time of the season. But no, they are in the driver's seat really at this current time for that number 1 seed. On the flip side of that, we have 3 teams at the bottom of the table right now. The Chrome in 6th place, 2-4 with a -9 goal differential. The Chaos are in 7th, also at 2-4, but a -12 goal differential. And then the Cannons 2-5, -12 goal differential. So we're going to see over these next 2 weeks, the Cannons obviously play twice. Chrome played twice this weekend, and then in another time in Week 8. The Chaos will play once this weekend, twice there in Week 8, like I said before, against the Archers and the Redwoods. So not an easy 2 games there in Week 8 for the Chaos. Just looking at that last playoff spot, that 7th playoff spot. Jordan, Dan, whoever, I should say, someone should go first. Let me direct someone to go first. Dan, if you want to go first, who do you like there kind of locking up that 7th playoff spot, and who are you looking at as kind of the team that would be on the outside looking in when it's all said and done after Week 8?
Yeah, I think I'm going to take the Chaos to be on the outside looking in. I think I see them finishing as the 8th seed. When we previewed their game, we kind of ran through where some of their deficiencies are. And it's in the places where when you're building a pro lacrosse team, you want to be the strongest, right? You want to be. I've had coaches and other pro personnel tell me before. You when you're building a team, you want to be strong through the middle of the field. You want to be great with an ex-attackman. You want to be great facing off. You want to be great in net. I would say the Chaos are sitting right now probably 1 for 3 on those. I don't consider Byrne really to be an ex-attackman. I don't think he's where he's most comfortable and where he does his best work. I think facing off, they're really hurting right now. They're really, really struggling. And Blaze, of course, is great. He's goalie of the year level goalie, but he's kind of Atlas holding up the world for them right now, where if you just catch Blaze on a day where he's not seeing it well, and those are once in a blue moon days, but if he has one down the stretch here, their ship is sunk. Like they need him to make all these saves, and if it doesn't work out, then they're kind of stuck. So, given the personnel of the teams that they're going up against, you just highlighted the remaining schedule of theirs. I think that the Chaos are going to be in a really tough spot to get another win or to even make up some goal differential ground that they might need to make up in order to get that 7 spot. And then I also just don't think it's in Lyle's DNA to allow them to miss the playoffs. Like I can't imagine a team with Lyle and Rabel and leaders like they have, and guys like Brody Merrill and Morocco to let that happen. Like I feel like that team is going to will itself into the playoffs somehow. So I'm taking the Chaos to be the odd group out.
I know, Jordan, I think you said it 2 weeks ago, too, and you said it in today's show. You like the Cannons here to sweep here over their final 2 games here of the regular season.
Exactly. Just to piggy off at Dan's point, and I think I even said it in the show before, I just can't see a Lyle Thompson team not making the playoffs. And I think I'm a little bit lower on the Chaos than maybe most people are, sort of to Dan's point. You talk about the key positions where you need help. They're 1 for 3 in those. And even this late in the year, do we really have a feel of what type of team the Chaos are? Do they really do one particular thing well? I mean, yes, Blaze makes all of this. Yes, Blaze makes the saves, but I mean, when you're getting that many shots thrown against you, you're going to have a high save percentage. You're going to have high numbers. So it's more so an indictment on how the Chaos haven't come together as a team. Granted, you can blame that on Justin Trudeau. You can blame that on injuries. You can blame that on other things. Anybody that wants to throw out the towers, hot seat BS, leave that alone. This year has just been a weird year for them. And that's really just sort of an indictment why I have the Chaos on the outside looking in.
Looking at it, obviously, with the Chaos remaining schedule this week, they have blanked here on the Chaos. They got the Chrome. So a game, obviously, that we were talking about before. The Chrome, you kind of control their own destiny. The Chaos kind of in the same situation here this weekend. But again, the Archers in Week 8 followed by the Whipsnakes. So 2 games that are not easy games there to close out your season. You're going up against 2 teams that are on the flip end, fighting for playoff seeding, probably that number 1 spot if it comes down to it. So we will see. Obviously, the trade deadline will be in effect following week 7, next Friday, August 6th at 2 p.m. Eastern is the trade deadline. And then kind of just looking at it here, wrapping up here before we finish up today's show, ahead of week 7, the MVP, the Rookie of the Year race is kind of coming down to the wire here. We've had some incredible rookie performances this season. Obviously, the superstars that we expected to play really well coming into the year have, Grant Ament, guys like that. They've played stellar this season. Dan, MVP pick right now, and who's your Rookie of the Year headed into week 7?
MVP for me is Grant Ament, but if it stays like this, Jeff Teat's going to be on the medal stand. He's going to get a top 3 finish. Rookie of the Year, again, I think it's, despite missing the beginning couple games of the season, I think it's looking like Jeff Teat, but that race is really, really good. I think TD has been awesome. I think Stephen Rafis it's a shame he's drafted with this group and not with a different group, because he's putting together a season that should be a lock for a Rookie of the Year award, but unfortunately he's doing it while TD and Jeff Teat are in the league. Terefenko has been great as well. So the Rookie of the Year race is a really, really good one. But I think Jeff Teat is going to lock it up.
Jordan?
Yeah, 100% agree. As much as I'd like to see a guy like Terefenko win that Rookie of the Year in the year that he's having, it's the unfortunate part of being drafted with this group and playing short stick defensive midfield, which is a position that really does not get a lot of love in these awards, except for he may win that short stick defensive midfielder of the year award. How much of a consolation prize of that is Rookie of the Year? You be the judge of that. For the MVP race, I think Jeff Teat will end up locking it up, just because I think the Atlas might go farther, and typically the PLL has waited until later in the playoffs to judge these awards. So it may be a situation where, and I'm not saying that as an indictment against Grant Ament. This could just be a situation where guys like Marcus Holman get hot, guys like Will Manny get hot, and Grant Ament's still going to be a part of that. He's still going to be a great feeder to those guys, but Jeff Teat is going to have the benefit of the doubt in terms of recency bias, which whether that plays a part in it, we don't know. We'll see, but it's hard. It's going to be hard to pick against Jeff Teat when it's all said and done.
I'm sticking. I think I like Jeff Teat there for the Rookie of the Year. I still think TD Erlin, if he keeps putting up great performance after great performance, I still think he'll be his name thrown in there. I think Danny Logan, too, has been playing some great lacrosse. But then, as you're saying, with the Ryan Terefenko thing, tough for an SSDM really to crack a Rookie of the Year. But we will see. In terms of MVP, I guess I'm going to go with Dan here. I like Grant Ament. Kind of the biggest thing last year, there was no Rookie of the Year last year. So Grant Ament obviously put together a stellar season last year, was kind of in that MVP conversation for a little bit there. Wasn't able to bring home a Rookie of the Year, so hopefully we'll see him here with this MVP this season if he continues to play as he's playing. But let's wrap this up very shortly. Again, just to go over the matchups here, we got the Atlas minus 1.5 goals against the Chrome on Friday night. The Archers will play the Redwoods. The Redwoods favored by 1.5 goals. The Whipsnakes are favored. The Whipsnakes are favored, by 1.5 goals against the Water Dogs. And then on Sunday, the Chrome favored by 1.5 goals against the Chaos, and the Atlas are favored by 1.5 goals against the Cannons. So wrapping up this season very, very quickly, coming up on us, as Dan said before, kind of the midway point of the season was the first chunk, followed by just like the last 2 weeks here as we're getting close to the 2021 playoffs, which are looking to heat up very, very soon. We're very excited to see how the final 2 weekends of the season shake out. And like I said before, after this weekend, ahead of Week 8 in Albany, we will have a much better idea of how everything could look. And then obviously we'll be talking much more about it next week and the following week ahead of Week 8. But Jordan, Dan, I want to thank you both for joining me today as we look ahead to Week 7 and the upcoming playoff push in the PLL as we quickly approach the playoffs. And that is going to do it for today's show. I want to thank you all for watching and or listening. If you are not already, make sure to subscribe to Goal Line Extended on YouTube and hit that notification bell so you get notified of future shows. You can also follow along on Instagram and Twitter at GL Extended. All of the links that you will need will be in the description of the video or podcast that you are viewing or listening to right now. Also, make sure to check out lacrosseflash.com. A ton of content coming up there in the coming week, as well as following this week 7 slate here in Colorado Springs. We will be back next Tuesday with the PLL Flash to recap week 7, and then we'll have a goal line extended teed up next Friday ahead of the bye week as well before we get into week 8 in Albany, as all of these games over the next 2 weeks hold important playoff implications. So make sure to like, follow, and subscribe so that you don't miss any of it. I hope you all have a fantastic week and weekend. Enjoy the return of the PLL along with all the other lacrosse content out there. Make sure to check out lacrosseflash.com and Lacrosse Flash on Instagram and Twitter. And obviously our full picks will be available ahead of this weekend. We will talk to you next week. Cheers.
Flags After Dark.
Let's go.
Follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at GL Extended and subscribe to the show on any of your favorite podcast outlets. You can find Lacrosse Flash on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and online at lacrosseflash.com.